Hello, everybody, and welcome to another SCORE webinar given by Mega Jewell. If you've seen her before, you know what kind of quality of presentations that she has. And today, interestingly enough, it's going to be talking about speaking, whether it's a public, whether it's speaking to another room. So just to give you a little bit of information about SCORE, if you're not familiar, SCORE mentors are local business owners and leaders that are available to help you in confidence. What that means is if you're looking to start, grow, or help your business in some way, you have about 10,000 SCORE mentors throughout the US that have specialty in your business and what your needs are, and also have the general knowledge of people who are running businesses. All of our mentors here in Monmouth are local mentors. SCORE is the largest all-volunteer mentoring organization in the United States. So you're going to get somebody who's going to be helping you along the way. On the next slide. So today I'd like to introduce Mega Jewell with a Mastering the Message, the Art of Effective Communication. Jewell? I'm sorry, Mega?
Thanks so much for the introduction, Bill. I see some folks that I've recognized in the past from other workshops. And just so you know, at the end of their presentation, I do share my email to book a 15-minute conversation. It's been so great to see some of y'all because it's nice to put a face and a voice behind all of that. But to kick things off, a little bit more about who I am, what I'm all about, and why we are here today. My name is Mega Jewell. You're more than welcome to give me any nickname that you'd like. I know it's cool already, but you're more than welcome to. My background started as a television news reporter and really focused on how do we tell complicated stories and lots of information into digestible pieces. And secondly, in terms of integrated communications, my whole goal is to go, all right, you've got an issue of not knowing, what your message is or getting the word out. My job is to make that simple. But at the end of the day, it comes down to how do we communicate about ourselves, about our business, and so forth. So I'm really excited to be able to share this with you. One last thing is the reason why I'm in front of you today is because I love and I have a passion for supporting small business owners. I think my mom is actually on this webinar too. She's a small business owner. She's an accountant. I have watched her day in and day out work tirelessly, putting on all different forms of hats for her business. And as I've evolved in my career, my whole goal is to give back and to make sure that I pay that forward. So I'm really excited to be in front of you today to talk about how do we really elevate your communication skills and grow that confidence? Because first and foremost, there will be none of the I can't do this today, I'm not good enough, la-di-da, like all of those different voices and insecurities and the I can'ts and I don'ts, all those negativity, we're going to put aside for just the next 45 minutes to an hour, because it's really all about you can, you will do this, and make sure that you will be able to really create the perception and the persona you want today. So in terms of our framework and what we'll cover is we're going to talk about public speaking, some of that body language and gestures, the filler words whenever we're looking for something to say or unsure of what not to say or what to say. How do we really inspire using open-ended question and taking command of the space that you have. In my situation, it's the box that I'm in, so virtual in that case. Now, before we get started, I want to hear a little bit more about you. And the reason being is this is important because that way we can customize the conversation based on your needs. Sometimes whenever I'm talking on these webinars and I'm just seemingly me, myself, and I, it's important for me to understand who's on the other side of the camera. What are your desires? What do you want to learn? And that way we can customize the approach for you. Now, I see some folks jumping in already on the conversation here. Got lots of folks in the professional reasons, personal, some relationships. So you could apply this for different aspects of your life. There are more than of you doing this, so hopefully you could jump in on the chat There is a link that I have dropped in there to see what you are interested in. That way we can customize this webinar just for you. So with that said, I'm gonna keep that going in case you want to drop into the chat and you're not able to go into the form. The questions are, why do you want to learn effective communication today? What do you want to learn? Networking. Thank you, Linda. And how do you want to be perceived? So that's some of the questions that we have. Let's see what else is next here. If I can learn how to do that, how to communicate our business to the public. And we want to be confident over all things, some humble, some genuine, some happy and calm. So thank you for sharing that. And for folks in the chat, keep at it. Want to get to know you. So Coney, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. What do you mean by one gold nugget? And speaking to seniors about Medicare, that could be something where we can break some misconceptions or barriers or misunderstandings. That's a good one, really great example. And being professional per presentations. What's really important here at the end of the day, the style that you have is yours, and to be able to own it and really create from whatever foundations that you want. It is not about comparing ourselves to other people. We are focusing on our individual lane and being able to be the best versions of ourselves. So lastly here, one idea I can apply after the webinar, communications runs through everything we do. Absolutely. So thank you for sharing a little bit more about what you want to learn. We'll definitely integrate some of that. If I miss it, please ask the question and I'll be able to address it. So the question was, how do you want to be perceived? How do you want people to, feel about you whenever you're talking, you're presenting, you're doing your stuff, whatever it is, or just having an informal conversation? Some folks say they want to be honest and assertive and happy. Most people want to be confident, gentle, and intelligent, humble, genuine, calm. But one of the things that I've learned is the things that you think about resonate and translate to what you say. What you say becomes your actions and they become your habits and then therefore your character. So that mindset of being confident and being able to say like, you know what? Yes, I can is a big part of like what Jane, you're saying, to come off as professional yet pleasant. It all starts with the mindset that you have. We have to be able to work and push aside, just at least temporarily, that insecurity that we might have to be able to get started into the next round, which is public speaking. So with that said, before I get started, this might be a funny, a little strange example, but whatever voice comes to your head or whatever thought process that comes to your head that is negative or puts you in a position where you kind of doubt yourself, give that voice, give that thought a name. It's silly. My name, the insecurity voice, I've given it a name called Tim. For anybody named Tim, I apologize, but that's who I've named it. And always I'm talking to Tim and say, you know what? I'm confident right now. I'm going to put you aside. I will talk to you later to be able to address this public speaking thing. And here's why. It's because many of us have a fear of public speaking. Oh my gosh, surprise, surprise. 75 out of 100 people, that's a lot of people, have a fear of public speaking or are very nervous about talking to others around the globe. It is a thing. It is not just uniquely us. It is pretty much everywhere. So hopefully that gives you like a nice little blanket to say we're not alone. 90% of the population report some form of shyness when it comes to giving a speech in public. How many of you can like talk your ear out and have a blast at dinner, talk with your friends? Let me tell you what's going on and give me the scoop and la-di-da. But when it comes down to a presentation, you're like, I'm a completely different person, la-di-da. So you are not alone. And this is something that many people go through, and it's absolutely normal. But the way that I like to address some of these is through the exposure theory, to just get through it. Practice makes progress. So one of my favorite recommendations for folks is that when you are overthinking about the things that you want to say or the format that you want to get into it, just talk. Well, that's so simple. You talk all the time. Well, the way that I have been able to practice this as a television news reporter, let me tell you how many times I have screwed up, talked in front of hundreds of thousands of people, and just messed it up. But the good news is every single time and every single day, you have a new opportunity to improve, not be perfect, but to improve. And so one of the suggestions that I have is whether you're walking your dog or you're driving in your car or whatever place that you feel comfortable, just talk. Now, safety is a priority. So I put safety over everything. So whenever I'm walking my dog, I have a Bluetooth, little earphone, just make sure people know that I'm maybe talking to somebody not crazy. So I'll talk about what I'm seeing. Hey, I'm walking my dog Charlie right now. The wind is blowing, or there's a red car that is passing by. That red car is now turning left. Why? Why are we talking for no apparent reason and just about the environment that you're in? And it's because when you're overthinking about all the content that you want to put in there, there's a lag behind what you're thinking to what you want to say. There's a lot of ahs, and then you kind of freeze sometimes. I'm not sure how many folks align with that. But when you just talk, that muscle just flows, and you can talk about the content and figure that out later. But building that muscle now makes a huge, huge difference. So once you get progress in terms of getting more comfortable talking, you're also giving your insecurity or that thought a name and tell it, you know what, not right now. I've got things to do right now. And then 2, record yourself. That's going to give you that artificial pressure to test out how you are, when you're actually live. So just some thoughts in public speaking, just to get some of that mechanical, technical stuff out of the way, just talk. 2, funky pen exercise. I know you're like, we're starting off, we're just getting to know each other, and you're like giving me weird things. I'm fine with that. Here's why. A good friend of mine or a mentor gave me this advice when I was starting to be a news reporter. I struggled enunciating my voice, being able to sound like I'm just talking about gibberish, or someone goes, say that again, I can't hear you. It is because the muscles in my jaw are just generally used to talking very nonchalantly in a normal conversation and maybe eating, like lots of it. But when I'm in a presentation, or when you are in a presentation, the atmosphere is very different. You have to give yourself more energy. You have to give yourself more enunciation and pronunciation, and there's more jaw movement and more precision. How do we activate those mandible muscles, the cheek muscles, and all of that stuff? It's through a pen. So having a clean pen and putting it in between your lips, like so, and reading something such as a news article or your about me really, really fast. That gets all those vibrations all throughout your muscle areas here, and it just tingles and it feels really like kind of weird. But then you stop reading the blurb, you pause for a second, you do it again at a slow rate. And what this does is, after you do it fast and slow, you put it down, put the pen down, you are now able to activate those muscles and be able to read and speak a bit more clearly, more precisely, and so forth. It's because of all the activation that happens. So we talked about just talking. We talked about giving your insecurity or thought a name to just tell it, you know what, not today. And now the activation of muscles. I am not sure how many of you have been told this, but I can tell you that these at least two things that I do, from talking whenever I just feel like I just have to talk, to these pen exercises, has drastically helped the way that I speak, just because I don't ever have that level of presentations where I get to, you know, train my muscles that way. 2 gold nuggets, ding, ding. I love it. All right. So we've got that out of the way. Now we're going to talk about content. And the reason being is we want to get the talking out of the way because the content, real estate, nonprofits, Medicare, the topic. No one can take that away from you. You are that subject matter expert, right? So just going to breeze through this because you've got this already. In terms of a general speaking structure, sometimes when you feel overwhelmed or you're trying to figure out what your concepts are, what your words are, it's probably because there's too much information. The way that I like to suggest my clients when it comes to media training or so forth is understand and picture who you're talking with on the other side of the camera or during a conversation or whatever. Simplify it. What do they care about? What matters to them, right? And answer that pretty directly. So knowing your audience, you've got your hook. Why should they give a damn about what you're saying? What are you affirming? What are you challenging? What are you persuading at the very front to make them go, say what? To give them that double take effect, because that's pretty important. Someone had a singing instructor who did the exact same thing with a pen for singing better. You will be surprised. There is a diaphragm exercise that I've also adapted from singing lessons to public speaking. So once you have that hook and like what's in it for me and what's in it for my audience, then you want to simplify your topic, whether it's Medicare or real estate, to 3 bullets, no more. And the reason being is because you will get too overwhelmed if you add 5 or 6 or 10, and then the audience that you're talking to, you're like, I have lost you entirely. Pick 3 things that you are really confident about, particularly on that subject. For example, Medicare. What is it? How is it relatable to you? How do you get started? Things like that. And then you can fill in the blanks. You know it. You don't have to memorize it. And you can conclude for that specific audience. What are those next steps and what are the actions to take from the audience's perspective? So now you can start framing your sentence structures and keep it light, at least to start. You will tend to speak very quickly, but that muscle practice from the pen exercise will help you slow down, catch the breath, and be able to really push through the sentences to make sure that you get that point across. Now, in terms of example, this is how I would get started in digital marketing, for example. Hey, if you are looking to get into a career of digital marketing, I want to start off with why would they like that? I would start with either adjusting your salary or remote work or something that cares for that particular audience. The 3 bullets is how do I get started in digital marketing in that career, where to find those resources, and 3 things that you might not necessarily know about marketing. And I'm just making this up because I love my career. Sometimes clients can change things last minute or what have you. So I could do 3 things. And I'll just make sure that this is simply put in 3 bullets so I don't forget. And that I know I can emphasize this point so the audience can be, well-versed in it. And then in terms of conclusion, in this particular case, I want them to follow me because I've lived it, I've walked it, and I want them to join my newsletter or course or whatever I'm putting together for this. So just a thought in terms of sentence structure for your content. Then next and last but not least, from public speaking, is creating content themes. Sometimes it can be very complicated, such as, healthcare and so forth, where you have too many things to talk about. There's, I'm thinking there's a marketing side, there's a legal side, there's an operations side, there's just so many things. I would again go down to KISS, where it's keep it simple. I believe the next word is stupid, but I want to change that to something else. But KISS, keep it simple, where you pick 3 or 4 topics and then create subtopics of that. Because the way you want to try to organize your thoughts is to really be as simple as possible and keep things to 3 aspects of your topic. And that way, when you're talking, whether you're just walking your dog or doing your presentation, you understand where your key milestones are, and then being able to create that sentence structure and that public speaking framework for you. All right. Are there any questions before I move forward to body language, gestures, and filler words? I think it's really important to acknowledge that if you are needing some support, this is a survey that I'm going to put in the chat that's helpful. And it's helpful for me in the past because it gave me a baseline of where I was in my clarity and my vocal variety. Am I up and down, or am I just monotone the whole way? What is my eye contact and gestures? Am I looking around at people, or am I looking on the floor? What does that look like? Gestures, I tend to be like all over the place. And so sometimes I'm measuring that and say, okay, like let's tame it down to here, instead here rather than over here. So these public speaking baseline surveys, and you can, take a note of this, is it's really all for you to be able to go, all right, like this is where I want to be, and this is my starting point. So you can have a measurable outcome whenever it comes down to your public speaking journey. So hopefully that link goes through, and I will be taking a look at that. Let's see what y'all are saying. A commanding voice. So for someone who's saying, what are you looking for to achieve a commanding voice? That's partly how you're breathing. We're going to get into that, from chest breathing to diaphragm breathing, being able to really take in that energy to hold through your sentences, to enunciate certain words that are important versus, putting emphasis on the word and, so's, those filler words, rather making sure that you understand which word needs the most priority. I want to be the go-to experts for Medicare answers. That means being able to explain things like you're 5, but also being able to explain things like you are super, advanced in that particular level. How do you dictate between the two, and how do you navigate those two? I want to learn my articulation, so be more clear. We're all in the same boat. Want to organize thoughts and want to be seen as the expert in the subject. Confidence, clearly speaking and organized. Pauses, okay. Look like I'm having fun talking. Are you smiling? Are you showing some teeth? Or getting my message across clearly and speaking with confidence? Yes, that's what we're here for. And want to be known as a structured and fluent presenter who can hold audiences for a long time. And I think that baseline goes and talks about that, because in a webinar setting, that's a little bit difficult, because I know you all through the chat and through this, and this is something that we could add interactivity in. But from like a board meeting to a public speaking, you could generally feel the audience. You can look around and see how many people are looking at their phones or what have you. And I think it's an important thing to know whenever there are cues like that from the audience. What do? Do you raise a question? Do you call on them? I usually call on people because it gets them like, ooh, I got to pay attention here. So that is very good. I appreciate you all filling that. And I see there is a Q&A. What do you do with your hands during a presentation? Absolutely. So Charlie, if you are looking to do like an in-person presentation, maybe you could elaborate. Sometimes I hold like the clicker or something to hold something, because sometimes if you're walking around and you're in person, you might not necessarily know what to do. But oftentimes I like to use my hands to kind of be beside me or by my arm like this, because it's kind of like in a neutral state. Whereas whenever I talk about something as an emphasis, like I want us to do something big. You could use that with your hands to like emphasize the particular message that you're trying to come across. So generally speaking, if you're not necessarily comfortable in the beginning, use a clicker of some sort or something to hold, whether it's your notes or something, just so there's something where you're not feeling like, what do I do with this? But then if the more advanced you are, whether you're at a podium or what have you, you could generally put your arms by your side, and that's a good neutral place to be. I've seen that be very comfortable for many people. All right, on a scale of clarity, we're at kind of the average is 2.6 out of, I believe, 5, a 10, and then 2.8 on vocal variety. Okay, so we've got some work here to do. And eye contact, an average of 2.8 for eye contact. So that's areas for improvement as well. Gestures, and lastly, our audience, the awareness that we have. Okay, so we'll definitely talk through a lot of these things and be able to come to the conclusion of like, what does that look like for you in terms of confidence? All right, thank you so much for sharing. So first and foremost, if you are looking to gain confidence, do it. Start practicing. Practice makes progress. It is not going to achieve perfection. I will never recommend anything to be perfect because I don't know what that even looks like. So being able to practice day in and day out will help you gain that confidence. It's going to take work. It is not going to come overnight. Be kind to yourself because you will make mistakes, and that's okay. Sometimes you find beauty in mistakes, and we will make progress because of that. In vocal variety, some of you want a commanding space and a commanding energy. Here's a graph of where you can start thinking about where you want to be. The horizontal axis is the speed, the duration of how quickly you talk, the slowness to the very, very fast. And then the vertical axis is volume. That's the shyness if we're kind of a bit more timid, maybe a one-on-one conversation, and we don't necessarily need to increase our voice. But then you go very high because you want to be loud and authoritative, but you're also slow because you want to be commanding of that particular space. So think about where you are or you want to be in this grid. Do you want to talk really slow but loud and authoritative on the left upper quadrant? Or do you want to talk really, really fast and be really excited all the time and go like, oh yeah, this is going to be really great. And we're going to learn effective communication and you are going to do great. That's animated. You're more slow and soft, which honestly I struggle with. I'm never soft in any capacity. It's just very, very and then that's more authentic, that's very much maybe more on the genuine side, being a bit more a one-on-one, for instance. And then on the right side, fast and soft in terms of creating anticipation. So just something to consider that you don't necessarily have to choose one quadrant over the other. It could be a variety because there are different sections that require different personas of you. And that's how the message is going to be put together and come across. All right, filler words. Ums, so's, you knows, also is a good indicator that wasn't necessarily planned out. For example, like I said earlier, what you think becomes what you say becomes your actions and your characters and so forth. And I think filler words fall under that bucket because you think, when you say I think all the time, which I do, you're always in a state of processing. You're not saying, I know, I believe, I am sure. You're like, I think this is it. So whenever I see that, especially in a job interview, I know that they're always in a thinking process, in a state of mind versus a more, I'm confident, which is I know, I believe, I'm sure. Something to think about for folks who want to be a bit more confident. What's yours? Use the chat. I would love to see like what folks feel is their filler words. And here's how to avoid it. We talked about recording ourselves, and I hope you do it because it's going to make a tremendous difference, because you'll then start to catch what your filler words are. I did not realize my you knows are very much my filler words. I can guarantee you they were integrated before this. And then now you're just going to hear it and you're like, oh my God, this is annoying. But again, practice makes progress. And what you say is a reflection of how you think of what you think. Everyone finds silence awkward, but it's much better than a bunch of ums. Yes, Byron is absolutely correct. Silence is actually a great tool to transition. There have been pauses and silence moments in this, and I don't know if it's awkward, but I never think so because I align with what Byron's saying. It is very much a great way to transition and help myself think about what the next thing is going to be about. Ums, yes, and there's a lot of ums and you knows and alsos. Alsos, if you look at your recording, do you say it? Also is a good indicator of saying, I forgot something. I forgot something. Let me add this, also that, and this and that, and also, and blah, blah, blah. So you'll know that if you use also and ands quite frequently, it's probably because you need to condense your framework and say, okay, what are those 3 bullet points that I need to come to? Because it's too many things that my brain can't process and I'm later forgetting and adding to it. So that's also another thing. But I find that interesting. And I have a personal opinion about this. So take it for whatever you want to with a grain of salt. But the way I see but is a bit conflicting because I think it's very condescending in some sense. And so I try to replace it with and then I go, well, now I don't know what to say because there's just too many things in my mind. So I do think that but is also a filler word, but you shouldn't necessarily think that it's negative. That's my opinion. I think you just came to a conclusion. Now I have found, okay, good for you for introspecting y'all. All right. Body language and gestures and the importance of it and how we can take this to a more practical application. When it comes to attention levels, how do we capture people's attention? I think it would be unnecessary and totally unrealistic to capture someone's attention the whole duration, especially if it's like a duration of like an hour. I think there are parts where I think, and I firmly believe that I want people to capture their attention and stay on something for 5 minutes at a time. That's kind of like a bit more realistic in my mind, just because of how I operate. I have a very small attention span, I think. And then that also connects with your postures and your eye levels and your eye contact. Being able to make this eye contact is very important, especially for in person. Why? It's because that emotional connection is happening. From a webinar perspective, if I'm looking down at the screen, there is that subliminal message where maybe it's okay to look away and then you'll slowly disengage. So that also is how your audience is going to rate your eye contact, your confidence level is through your posture, to your eye contact. So be mindful of that. How do you want to be perceived? Yet again, if it's confident, you want to stand tall and you want to be able to keep that stature for the duration of your conversation. And hand gestures, someone had asked that, but using your hand gestures to emphasize something big or something small, or being able to talk with your hands where you're very cognizant of where they're at. If it's on a box like this, take it for a little what it's worth and play within this space of the lower quadrant of your screen. But be mindful when it starts going beyond, But to be comfortable, I would say hold something just for the start. Be at a podium to have some place where you can lay and kind of relax. Or if you're a bit more advanced, go freehand. Nothing in your hands and being able to stand by your side and using that to really emphasize certain messages. All right. This is something where I have heard someone use singing as an example. So when you're taking command of this space, you want to do a couple of different things or a few things. You want to engage with your audience, eye contact, gestures, pauses, and so forth also. We talked about silence is okay. Awkwardness is not necessarily awkward. I think it's in your head. So pause effectively as a transition and articulate your speech clearly. So each of these things, we're going to go through it. Diaphragm breathing. I think we have an example shortly, but here's how you want to do it. First, I want you to put your hand on your chest and also the second hand on your stomach and take a breath. And recognize that your hand is moving. Which hand? For me, when I'm breathing, it's my chest that's moving up. That's great. But your chest cavity is it's a little bit smaller than your diaphragm. And so we're going to move over to diaphragm breathing, which is moving pretty much your stomach at this case, where you're going to see that when you take a breath, your stomach is the one that expands, not your chest. And I'll send some specific directions for this. I usually do this like 5 to 10 times a day, no more than that. Sometimes I'm on the floor laying down just so I can have a little bit more practice and more awareness in that capacity. But this diaphragm breathing is going to allow more air to come in, and you're going to hold on to that and get more power when you're speaking, be more articulative, and also hold more things in terms of what you're saying. Instead of saying 1 or 2 sentences and then losing your breath, you can hold, a bit more by being able to use diaphragm breathing. Pausing. When we talk about pausing, sometimes you can use movement too. Some people kind of pace, some people tap. So there's energy happening. So you want to be very intentional with where that energy goes. Movement is used, at least for me, as a way to go, I'm thinking of where I'm going to stop in this particular section, and my body literally moves with me. And I'm talking again, and I'm talking and I'm walking and I'm pacing the room potentially to make eye contact with everybody. And I'm pausing and my body pauses. So you can use your movement to align with the message that you want to come across. And last but not least, when you're speaking clearly, when you walk into back up, before you walk into the room, before you walk into the meeting, visualize what success looks like. You know why? Because if we are going to think about all the negative things in the space that could happen, well, there's this thing called self-fulfilling prophecy, and likely it will happen because you've thought about it and it's going to come out to what you say. It's going to be habitual and it's going to be part of your character. Again, it's a cycle. So when you visualize success and you practice and you put the work into it, I can almost guarantee you that you will make improvement. And this is where it's really important that mindset goes into play. Last but not least, to be an effective communicator, you have to be an effective listener. And part of that is asking good questions. How many of you have gone to a networking event and someone has asked, or someone asks, or you ask someone, what do you do? I just go crazy when someone asks me what I do, because then I'm like, well, what do you want to know? I take care of my dogs, my husband. I like to dance now. I'm picking up this hobby. I'm an integrated communication specialist. You want to know about my family? Like, what do? I don't know, because there's too many things. And that question has helped me realize questions help start and frame a particular conversation, whether it's business, professional, whatever, business and personal, whatever. So instead of asking, what do you do? Where are you from? Oh, and how are you? Too general, especially if you don't know anybody. Instead, here are some questions. What are you most passionate about in your work or in your life? Can you share a recent success or achievement that you are proud of? And how do you see your industry evolving in the next few years? That could be something in real estate. That could be something in Medicare. That could be something in other aspects of what we talked about in the chat. Think about how this question or all these questions might help you have deeper, more meaningful conversations with strangers or even your current friends and family and clients and so forth. I did this webinar actually in person with like a group of 70 folks, 70 people. And I recall that someone had raised their hand and said, hey, I asked my friend who I've known for 2 years what she is passionate about, and I found out something new about them. Those are powerful tools to be able to open up the door to talk about something else other than what you do. Because what we do does not define us. My job and my title and my business does not define who I am at all. But I can definitely tell you what my passions are, what my like recent challenges are, and we can have an open discussion that could lead to something else, probably much more powerful than if we were to ask something as surfacey as, what do you do? I have a comment here. I agree with you, but what do you say to someone who argues? Quote, but you know why I asked, what do you do, because of where we are. Absolutely. I think that's fair and is very contextual. If you are at a networking event, sure. Another person says, go to another person to network with. But you know why I asked you, because you're why we're here. I mean, to Angela's point, I would say, that's great. It's a pleasure to meet you. And maybe it's not the right person, but I think there are so many ways to ask a question to get to the same point. And what do you do can be, how do you see your industry evolving in the next few years could lead to what you do a little bit further. Yes. So Angelo has a really great perspective of like, it's not for you. So you can respectfully decline, go like, that's fantastic. I would be a bit more polite in sense of not necessarily knowing how to navigate them. Like, this is nice. It's a pleasure to meet you. I got to run to the bathroom. I got to go grab a little appetizer. I got to talk to you later. But that's just something that we can probably handle on a case-by-case scenario. Knowing that there are options for open-ended questions is probably really powerful at the end of that. All right. I appreciate this sideline conversation. And last but not least, it's tangible resources from you for you. I have found that I have a few people that I look up to for speaking. And it's not that I want to be them or, put them in a pedestal, but I like aspects of things that they do. I have several times in my life taken like a newscaster, for example, because I was that for a while. And I literally took their video, and on YouTube, you could print out the captions. And I literally watched them and watched the script and which words they've used and where they enunciated their words, where they paused. I put lines and squiggly lines to indicate where all these things were happening. And I studied that for months. Why did they use this word? Why did they emphasize another word? Why did they pause there? So by having people that you look up to who can speak effectively, you can then start to pick how they do their techniques, but also then seeing, okay, like here's what you can relate with, here's what I like, and making that your own. That's one of the things that I love about learning. It's being able to take something and adapt it and make it your own, like, magic and all that stuff. You've got podcasts, books, and coaches and for guidance. There actually, I have tomorrow a client of mine who's wrapping up her conversation, her public speaking journey. And it's really awesome because we went from a jumbled mess of like 3 minutes of her introduction now to a 30-second solid elevator pitch that has emotions, that has genuine, feelings and her history, and a call to action that sparks, interest and energy. So that's a really important thing for folks to know that you are not alone. There are so many resources out there for you, but you will not get good at public speaking or effective communications unless you practice it. Practice it daily, practice it weekly, whatever the cadence you are comfortable with. But I kid you not, take it one step at a time and you will get incrementally better each and every single step of the way. So with that said, we have time for comments, we have time for questions, but to summarize what we have learned, first and foremost, talk. Talk it out. Talk until your spouse can't handle it. I know I do. And be able to practice at any given time because you want to be able to express all these talking muscles out, get it out of the way. Then we could do content later. Give your insecurity a name because it is not the time, it is not the place. You are the subject matter expert. You are confident. Yes, you can, and you will be able to accomplish it. That's the mindset that we have. Being able to categorize our speeches, whether it's an hour long to 10 minutes long to 30 seconds, what's the hook? What are 3 major milestones that you want to talk about? And what do we do to conclude it that's going to be a strong call to action? Don't forget the diaphragm breathing. It's very important. It's actually interesting that it makes a huge difference. I mean, not really, but it does. And also the pen exercise to really activate the muscles in your cheeks and your jaw. And last but not least, the ums and the ahs. It's okay. Don't bend over backwards for it, but just know that you are able to do other things such as pausing to be able to transition and get your mind to a good spot to be able to know, like, what's the word I'm going to use next? And then last but not least, open-ended questions. Basically, we all agreed based on that Angelo and a conversation in the chat that screw the person who's asking, what do you do, if they're going to make a big deal out of it? Like, see ya, I'm going to go get some apps. But be sure to be able to integrate these genuine conversations because that's how you're going to know people better. Be curious about them, ask them about them to be able to open up that conversation to, lead and tie it back into your, focus and what you want to share. All right. So questions, I got some questions here. Do you find Toastmasters to be a good place to practice? Yes, I love Toastmasters. For those who do not know what Toastmasters is, it's like this global network of folks who want to improve their public speaking. When I had joined Toastmasters back in high school, college, and then thereafter, I went to a Toastmasters club anywhere and everywhere. I started in Surabaya, Indonesia, actually, and got to do my first 2-minute speech. I was nervous. My armpits were sweaty. It was just this whole ordeal. But 15 meetings later, I was able to have great team members who gave me good constructive criticism and be able to practice in front of them and actually articulate something that made sense. It was this huge progress that you can see just flash before your eyes. I think they're on Meetup. I've seen some of those there, but yeah, the Toastmasters is great because they have different pathways for different activities from a personal, professional, and they even had a TV news one for me. Let's see, Angelo, I just saw I called you Angelo. Sorry about that. That's all right. We're all forgiving here. And someone attended their first Toastmasters. That's fantastic. I hope that you continue that or, share because a lot of folks are in the same position. We're all getting better. We're all making progress. And that's the best thing. All right. So with that said, are there any specific public speaking questions? Because what I do want to give you is my email. We will share this presentation with you at the end of this. We'll give you all the content, the recording, so not to worry. But I do have a 15-minute conversation that I would love to offer because sometimes you're not necessarily too specific in these, and I want to be able to give you that time and energy specifically for you. So with that said, I appreciate you all for attending and investing in your own journey here, and I hope to see you in the next one.
So again, I just wanted to say in closing, thank you again. Thank you, because this information that you gave us was really helpful. And public speaking is a challenge that we have from back when you were in school and you had to stand up in front of the class and your parents told you, oh, aren't you going to be afraid? Well, we put that into our minds, but we can change what we're thinking. And one of the things that came up with is Toastmasters is a great way to attend a weekly meeting, how to better your skills so that whether it's in front of an audience or it's one-to-one, many of Mega's specific points were really, really spot on for how to help you to be a better communicator. Because it's great if what you have is great, but if nobody knows about it, that's not great. So what I'd encourage you is we are going to send this out to everybody afterwards. Please feel free to reach out to Mega because she's a wealth of information, as you've seen in any of her prior webinars. And she's going to be continuing to give us other additional gems along the way here too. But with that, I'd like to just close out this webinar saying, if you're interested, please reach out. We have 10,000 SCORE mentors throughout the country ready to help you, always confidential. We're a partner for the SBA. So what that means is we are all volunteers. There's no compensation pay of any kind. We're just here to help you. It's a lot of very, very experienced business owners and leaders here to help. We're going to be sending you all this information afterwards. Please keep, when you get the next posting for Mega's next webinar, sign up for it right away so you don't forget. Because the worst thing would be saying, I missed one of Mega's webinars. Even though we'll have it on YouTube, being in person is so much better because you're there, you're living it live. So with that, again, I'd just like to once again thank you, Mega, for doing another amazing job today. And we look forward to the next time that you're with us. You'll get this information, give it about 2 days because we just have to get it out and process to you. So thanks again. This is a SCORE presentation. We're from Monmouth SCORE, but we handle everyone from throughout the whole country. Thanks so much, everybody.